Hello everyone, and welcome to the EBS Associates webinar, Upgrade or Move to the Cloud, Key Considerations for EBS Customers. My name's Julian Troke, and I am the Senior Director for Marketing at EBS Associates, and I will be your host today. Before I hand you over to our speaker, John Schmotlak, our VP of Delivery, I just wanted to let you know that all the lines are muted, but you can ask questions at any time using the chat window within WebEx, and we'll address all the questions at the end of the presentation. Also, following the webinar, we'll be sending out an email with a copy of the slides and a link to the webinar recording. So now it's my pleasure to hand you over to John Schmotlak, our speaker today. John, over to you.
Thank you, Julia. So thanks everyone for joining me this afternoon. We have some good content here to go over. Very quickly, just like a Oracle presentation, we have a little confidentiality statement in here. So this is just telling you that this is privileged information between EBS Associates and the attendees of this conference. Our agenda for today, we're going to be talking about a little bit of an introduction about myself and about EBS Associates, and then get into application roadmaps around what the future is of EBS and also what's happening in the cloud today. We'll talk a little bit about the migration path, what a typical EBS to Oracle Cloud migration would look like, and then just a summary of the key considerations about, making a move and what goes into some of that decision making. So some of the key things that we talk to our customers about on a daily basis, and things that they're thinking about, things that we feel are relevant for any customer that's looking to make a move. We'll wrap up with responses to any questions that might come through the chat window as well. So a little bit about EBS Associates. We global IT consulting services provider. We've been around for about 15 years, headquartered in the Boston, Massachusetts area, and we have about 600 or so, 600 plus consultants, about 750 total employees on a global basis. We offer services around business applications, including Oracle, eBusiness Suite, Oracle, ERP, HCM Cloud, as well as the Analytics Suite, both on-premises and in the cloud. Integration platforms, including Oracle's MuleSoft and some other integration platforms in there. An infrastructure and cloud services group, which includes traditional DBA services that many EBS customers will be familiar with, as well as a very strong AWS partnership, in terms of offering cloud services and helping customers to migrate their applications and other applications, not just EBS, into the cloud. We also have our own product development team where we actually develop products and sell them on the marketplace. We have about 24 Oracle Cloud projects. This number is actually probably increasing as we go through the course of this year, and 20 live Oracle Cloud customers. So a pretty decent group of customers, customer base to be able to pull from. Several of those customers have actually transitioned off of EBS, so that's going to be a focus of lessons learned that we've talked about today. We do work very closely with Oracle development, both on the SaaS products on the cloud side, but also the platform as a service and the infrastructure as a service, products as they relate to Oracle. The revenue recognition module and functionality that's been released recently, and also on the supply chain management in the cloud. So these are key focus areas for us in the journey through where Oracle is heading in the cloud. We actually run ERP Cloud to run our business and also run HCM Cloud as well. So we're customers as well as partners of Oracle. And we have certain designations within the Oracle partner ecosystem, being a go-to partner and a Cloud Select partner to be able to provide services, and having certified consultants and a number of referenceable clients in that mix. A little bit about me. I have about 20 years of experience in implementing business systems, not exclusively, strained to Oracle, but, 20 years ago started on 10.7 and R11 of EBS and as a client side, and then have been in consulting, off and on since that initial implementation in the late 90s. I started out as an order management supply chain consultant in the EBS world and did quite a few customer implementations in the early 11i days in my consulting career. I've had a mixture of consulting and internal business systems and CIO type positions. So a lot of what we talk about are the types of things that I would be thinking about as a CIO of a company and the things that you're thinking about as customers today. Really focused on looking at the applications as an enterprise application, not just a portion of the application stack that's in place at a customer site. So true belief of mine is that, one or more applications make up a solution within a customer site. So the ability to actually have a full solution, across multiple application platforms is an important part of being successful. So a lot of what we do and how we think about things relate to not only Oracle technology, but other technologies that fit into the enterprise stack. I've been involved with Fusion applications as SaaS products were originally known. Since they released one, I've been on a customer advisory board, supporting the application development and provide lots of inputs based on my customers and also as a customer to Oracle in terms of where they're going on the Fusion, application stack. We started our cloud applications practice, roughly 3 years ago at EBS Associates, and, the team was built underneath me in providing services there. Today, I spend a large majority of my time working through exactly the topic of this webinar and helping customers to migrate and come up with roadmaps for migrating from on-premises applications into the cloud. So a big portion of the discussion points that we talk about when we talk to our customers is going to be included in the content of this webinar. Okay, so let's jump into the application roadmaps. And we'll start out on the EBS side of things because this is really the pertinent story associated with the customers of EBS and where we're going and what's the urgency associated with staying on EBS. So a lot of our customers say, is there a business driver to immediately, move to the cloud, right? Or is Oracle abandoning EBS? And it's very clear from, discussions, attending open world discussions with the Oracle team that EBS is going to remain for quite some time, right? They are continuing to, provide new releases and new functionality associated with the EBS stack. And there's a roadmap in there that at the very least extends beyond the current release of 12.2.6 to be able to get into and a planned major 12.3 release the next year. So they are continuing to put additional functionality in on EBS while there is a focus on the cloud, right? So there has been many discussions with much of the product development people around the commitment to EBS customers and the continued focus on EBS customers, continuing to use Oracle products. So while you may be getting calls from an Oracle sales rep saying, come see what we have in the cloud, it's not because, EBS is going to be de-supported, right? There are, in the 12.2.6, highlights, and this is information that was released last year at Open World. There's a variety of different things that are going on within the stack that shows some of that continued, investment in the EBS product, right? Some elements of recurring billing and subscription billing coming into the order management stack, some different features and functionalities and continued enhancements being processed associated with, the EBS stack as it exists, things that have been on the roadmap for quite some time. They're continuing to put into releases and going along within that path, right? So customers who are currently running a successful, process flow within EBS, are continuing to see, let's call them small enhancements to be made to the overall stack, right, and the functional innovation. And this is, historically looking at what we expect to see on the EBS side from point release to point release. I haven't really seen a slowdown in terms of the innovation, around the module basis of different, features and functionality that are being released. This does not appear to be, significantly different from how it has been in the past, related to, different pieces of functionality. So we continue to move at a similar pace on enhancements being incorporated into new releases as what we've seen in the past, and commitment to continuing to process those enhancements, is still there from Cliff Godwin and his team from a development perspective to continue to support that. So customers remaining on EBS should continue to see a level of innovation similar to what they've seen in the past. Right. I think one of the things that we see a lot, now that is relatively new has been, some differences on the user experience perspective. And Oracle has been embarking on this user experience concept for many, many years. And they're trying to bring all the different applications that they've brought in through acquisition and whatever into a more common UI from a homepage perspective, and the core skin associated with the UI that at least looks familiar, even if it's separate applications that are running. So many of you have seen the common homepage that's gone in, some of the new HTML pages that are in there. A lot of those pages are consistent around EBS and the cloud and, PeopleSoft releases and the like, right? So they've also done a little bit more from a EBS perspective in terms of making EBS a little bit more tablet friendly. So gestures and, things like being able to swipe on certain screens is definitely, something that has become a more common feature across some of the application screens, right? Underneath it all, the overall structure associated with EBS, still has, forms level, pieces that rely on Java to be able to run that. The guts have not been completely rewritten, but I think everybody on this call, this webinar, is aware of the fact that many of the screens have moved to an HTML format, and they've been trying to orient those HTML screens into more of the standard user experience initiatives that go along with EBS. Right? To add on to that, in the 12.2 release was a big focus on moving to the WebLogic server and some of the operational efficiency pieces around online patching to be able to reduce the amount of downtime associated with a patching event, and being able to handle those types of interactions in a better way than they were able to when we were dealing with pre-12.2 releases, right? And then some of the storage capacities for concurrent management files and ways to interact with the application through the DMZ. Those are some things that Oracle is at least attempting to, within the EBS stack, make improvements for companies that have been asking for this for many, many years, right? And we see a slightly different approach from the international components for customers that are running in multiple languages. So some improvements associated with that. So while they can't change the entire stack of EBS, they're introducing component parts associated with this that are, making efficiency gains, through the process that's there. When we talk about timelines for what is supported and what will be supported, key thing to pull away from this is from an EBS perspective. Those of us who are running on 12.1, there's no immediate need for you to jump off of of EBS to go to the cloud, you still have a pretty decent time window, as it's stated right now, for Premier Support to be running through the end of 2021, sustaining support thereafter. So, we would expect that Oracle is putting this forth, understanding that many of their customers are really, well entrenched within their EBS space, and they're going to need time to plan to make a move to the cloud, right? And so you don't see, people forcing you into making a move off of 12.1, for another 4.5 years, really. So that's a pretty decent time frame in terms of being able to leverage your current applications install. Of course, 12.1 to 12.2 upgrade, we do see a number of those happening for a number of reasons, to keep the technology stack current, to take advantage of some of the 12.2 features, and to keep things running. That 12.2 Premier Support going through 2023 adds a couple more years on that. So 6.5, 7 years of time, is a very long time to be able to stay with your EBS stack, right? And it's indicative of the fact that Oracle will continue to be releasing new versions of EBS as you go along, through the process, right? So obviously 11.5.10, big release within Oracle, 12.0, those have passed their support period. They're deeply within the sustaining support model, and so those customers that are still on those applications are kind of well aware of limited support options as it relates to their application stacks from there. So many of the customers that we talk to today are customers that are running 11.5.10 and 12.0 installs of EBS, and trying to make a decision on whether they invest in putting the money to upgrade into the latest EBS environment, or whether they would make a move to the cloud. But more and more people that are running 12.1.3 or 12.2.5, 12.2.4 are starting to plan around the discussions there. So the good thing is that with a time sense of 4.5 to 7 years, you do have time to be able to kind of learn and educate yourself around what's available in the cloud and how Oracle is innovating in the cloud before you are faced with a decision, that's related to moving off of support, right, for your Oracle products that are there. So these numbers have stayed pretty consistent over the last 12 to 18 months. We will, of course, expect periodic refreshes associated with this time frame. But key thing as an EBS customer is that you're not kind of getting forced to go down the path that's there. So that gives you a good amount of time to evaluate what's happening in the cloud, what's available in the cloud, and where you see the cloud going and how it fits within your organization. So many customers are appreciative of the fact that this type of a time fence exists, and that we are able to really spend time educating ourselves about whether a move to the cloud is the right move for us, right? So some observations on the EBS side. Here at EBS Associates, we saw many new EBS implementations in 2015 and 2016. We have a couple of new EBS implementations happening in 2017, but we definitely see that there's a drop-off associated with EBS sales, new modules or brand new installs of EBS as they exist within new customer bases within the Oracle stack. A lot of that has been driven from some changes in the sales compensation plan at Oracle last year, where sales reps were really incented to sell only cloud versions of the applications. And so, commission statements, it was really an exception where the sales rep would bring, EBS into a new sale. Obviously, will lead to a drop-off associated with with brand new sales that are out there. Clearly, ways to be able to buy new EBS products and to buy new EBS environments, but the vast majority of the push from the Oracle side has been to make cloud, ERP cloud and HCM cloud sales, around their space here, right? So what we've seen with this is a drop-off of, quote-unquote, new blood coming into the EBS environment, right? And so we would expect that with, fewer new customers coming into the EBS, phase, that you'll be dealing with more, you'll be dealing with probably less, kind of new customer perspectives associated with, some of the customer-driven enhancements within the fields. So as more people are moving or electing to, implement the SaaS-based applications here, we do expect that number of customer-driven enhancements are going to go down, right? And so as the new releases are coming out within EBS 12.3 and beyond, we would expect that those releases will become, much more focused on, kind of cleaning up and working through the existing pipeline of customer enhancements versus a lot of, new blood driving, wholesale changes to the EBS stack that's there, right? The other thing that we're seeing in new customers as they're coming out is that there's a lot more to the decision-making process than, what was there, 10 years ago. So 10 years ago, I can remember when you were looking at Tier 1, ERP applications, you're primarily looking at an ERP application that could actually do everything for you, right? The complete stack. We've heard this before. The buyers today are very different. We see a lot of best-of-breed, type solutions that involve bringing in, Salesforce and Workday and a financial ERP system and, a different reporting system and kind of piecing all these things together. So there's a lot more focus on the integration platform that goes along with these tools, right? And how easy it is to actually pull all the data together and make it transfer between all these different application stacks, right? So this is also cyclical. I can remember 15 years ago that best of breed was a very popular way of actually doing this, but the technologies that exist on the integration platforms today, are vastly different from what was available to us 15 years ago. So you can get away with actually, using web services and more modern, ways of actually moving data between these systems and, cut down the amount of time it takes to actually, build and maintain and monitor these integrations from how it used to be. So there's also a shift in the overall population that's actually using the applications. And so we see, I tell the story that I'm usually the old guy in the room now when we're doing implementations, because there's a large part of the workforce which is, hitting the millennial age, or, people who have a different perspective associated with how an application should work. So user experience enhancements and UI enhancements that are very, very important to these users and how they actually interact with the applications themselves. And this is more of an expectation than a nice to have now. So you'll see that in the cloud and with the cloud-based tools, there's a lot more kind of features and functionality built around, social aspects and social tools, easier ways to be able to, modify screens without development. There's lots of, user experience type activities that have been driven by this, this workforce that, has never touched a green screen type of, or character-based type data import, process before. And they have an expectation around how the applications will work and, fairly low tolerance for, kind of multiple screens, multiple clicks, and those types of things. So these UI, UX enhancements, while some of them are making their way down into the EBS side, I think the new system buyers are actually looking for that to be kind of an out-of-the-box expectation, right, that comes in with there. So most of the customers that we're actually selling to today on a new ERP system, don't have a server room in their office. They don't have a data center. They don't really have a full-blown, heavy-duty IT department that goes along with this. And so they're really looking for, this new deployment of an ERP solution to not have to require the purchase and installation of, a bunch of servers and maintenance of a bunch of servers and, don't want to pay for lots of different support contracts to be able to support this. So it's very much a business-driven application, right? And IT is not typically the one leading the decision-making around the finance or the HCM solutions. It's typically the finance and the HR department that are the ultimate decision makers, and in many cases, the ultimate administrators of the application. Which is very different from how we have seen a typical EBS customer, kind of organized with their organization and also deployed out there. So these ERP, this kind of shift in the way that ERP is being sold is a lot of what's driven Oracle to kind of move into the cloud, right? Because they can't make EBS, they can't rewrite all of EBS to, get rid of the guts and the core of the EBS environment. So the big focus has been on, getting the cloud applications to, be feature-rich enough to be able to match the functionality that customers are actually using within EBS today, right? So coming to the next slide on the Cloud ERP Roadmap, right? So a big portion of the cloud has been to not necessarily release a complete suite of applications, at one time, right? But to continually enhance the applications and the features that are available within a core stack of financial applications, right? So we are currently in the cloud on release 12 of the Fusion applications, if you will, right? That release 12 looks significantly different from release 1 and release 2. Those initial releases were very much focused on very, very basic core financials and, essentially a HCM solution that, did a lot of the employee and manager self-service functions and, offered some level of mobile capabilities that's there. And the way that the cloud has grown is that they have added modules and added features to the cloud to be able to support more of the end-to-end process as it goes along, right? So historically, we have found that it hasn't been a one-for-one match between what's available in EBS to what's available in the cloud, and that's still the case today. And so as an example, there was no order management or supply chain capabilities available to customers in the cloud until Release 11 came out about a year and a half ago, right? So if you're looking at a typical EBS customer that may be running financials and purchasing and, order management and some light manufacturing, they couldn't do the order management and the light manufacturing components in the cloud until about a year and a half ago. Okay, so that has been out, and we have actually seen some customers adopting that functionality but it's a year and a half old, right? It's one release in. And so, we expect that as more customers are adopting that functionality and more features are actually released into that functionality, that it will come closer to meeting the needs of a typical EBS customer, right? As another, guidepost here, there are features that are available within order management in EBS that are not available within order management in the cloud. And some of them, are related to, relatively, basic functionality around pricing rules and pricing overrides that are just now being released in Release 12, but weren't available in Release 11. So even though they had a module in the cloud to be able to support order management, didn't necessarily mean that they could actually, process the full order management process flow that a customer is looking at from within EBS, right? And so what we expect to find is that, they would release a basic product in the first release for supply chain and for order management, and then move to enhance that functionality in future releases, right? So the roadmap would include, some significant functionality changes that would actually, help close the gaps between functionality that's available in EBS and functionality that's available in the cloud. So when we look at the roadmap for the cloud, I'll call attention to the middle box on the screen, which is really talking about kind of completing the process flow as it relates to supply chain and EBS, right? So in the middle of the screen, you actually see some things that are tagged with new products, right? So today, in the applications in the cloud, there is no install base, there is no quality, there is no demand planning or supply chain collaboration, right? Those modules don't exist. And those modules are actually targeted for a release in Release 13, which is scheduled to be released at the end of this year, roughly around that time. So for many customers, they're still looking for that complete flow that exists there. So you kind of see, the way that this is kind of built upon each other is that you're seeing, some of these enhancements coming in on a release-by-release basis that actually finishes out the solutioning that exists there. So, the decision-making in our typical customer is understanding where things are coming into play, where functionalities are going to be released, and how that actually fits into what you're currently using from an EBS perspective. Hopefully that clarifies kind of how the cloud is being built, right, and where things are going from there. The other thing that's always been a challenge around the SaaS applications has been a lack of access to the back end, right, and a lack of ability to be able to, kind of create customization. So if you have a heavily customized EBS environment, you're now moving it into an area where you don't have access to the source code. You don't have access to be able to, see the tables and pull the data from the tables and all that type of stuff. And so we enter into this concept of PaaS, Platform as a Service, which has really become an important factor in actually closing the gap around customers that require, some level of custom solution, right? All Platform as a Service it's a virtual server that you would log into that comes pre-installed with a variety of development tools and security pieces associated with it. So if we look at this, there are component parts associated with mobile application developer, JDeveloper, Java, an integration platform, a database as a service, right? Pieces coming in here. There's, kind of a UI development platform. There's, some security elements associated with it. And it's really like in a combination world to what you're doing in EBS today. You probably have, JDeveloper running on a laptop or a server. You probably have an integration server that you're using to be able to move data back and forth. You might have a business intelligence data warehouse. You might have a install of identity management, solution, maybe some Fusion middleware installation, component installations. So PaaS is really like a virtual server that pulls all of those component parts together that you would use, and this is like a toolkit, really. And you can build your custom applications on here or your customizations on here, pull the data from the SaaS environment, run it through a custom program, and then spit it back into the custom, the SaaS application. So if, for example, on an AP invoice, you wanted there to be the equivalent of a trigger or a workflow object that would actually go and based on the value that you input into a certain field, you want that to, or maybe 3 different fields, you want to derive the value that's in the 4th field, right? That is something that kind of comes into play for this, where you could actually take the data out, come up with the logic for determining what the value should be in that 4th field and send that 4th field value back into the applications. And from a user's perspective, it doesn't look any different from running a customization on EBS, but it actually, pulls in, it actually keeps the customization separate from the core application stack. So the real benefit to the PaaS environment is that these tools are all kind of all in one place for you, and you don't have to install them, and it's a subscription basis, so you kind of enroll in the subscriptions that you want to use. It's kind of in one place, and you don't have to have things running on 4 or 5 separate servers. So let's talk about the migration path as an example. So we've talked the considerations, the big considerations that we have in there. Solution fit. We've talked about that a lot as we're going through the cloud applications. You need to be able to take what you have running in EBS and at least have a full solution running in the cloud to be able to go there. You need to consider the fact that this is a separate application. So there's no upgrade really from EBS to Fusion. It's a new install with a new implementation. So for some people, that's an interesting component because you may be evaluating a complete chart of accounts change. You may be looking at, kind of 15 years of data that you don't need to necessarily have the same structure that was in place 15 years ago. But it is a new implementation, and so there is a data conversion element associated with this. Some customers will look at this as an opportunity to sunset certain applications in EBS in favor of some other solutions, some other best-of-breed solutions, yet still have an integrated solution across multiple, platforms that are out there. So, those are all, component parts associated with that that need to go into the decision, right? The key thing off of an EBS conversion is really talking about the standardization of processes, right? Is that you are accepting to a certain extent that the standard process out of the box will work for you, right? And so, there's an opportunity to kind of go back to a best practices model as part of these installs and not replicate all the customizations that you have running in EBS today. Kind of leveraging some new functionality that actually might replace some of the customizations that you have in EBS today. There's a BI reporting layer that's embedded within the application, which is a lot better than Discoverer in terms of actually being able to pull, reports out of and analysis out of. So that's definitely, key there. And, a reason for a lot of customers to want to make the move, to go to the cloud. But the intimidating part is that you may have 15 years, 20 years of running an EBS environment that has been so firmly entrenched within your application structure that decoupling that and kind of pulling that apart is a daunting task. And so, a lot of customers are actually looking at from a phasing perspective, is there a way that we can, move some components into the cloud and keep some component parts running in EBS? And Oracle would call that coexistence. And there are, some elements of that we, have seen, work, pretty well from a, HCM is a good example. People coming off of EBS and HR moving into the HCM cloud tools is a good example of taking piece by piece portions of this functionality and implementing those to get process improvements. So good to talk about the reality, right? There is no upgrade path. We mentioned that. There are technology components associated with this that are different from what you're likely running in EBS today. So the integration is all, either done through file-based loaders or through web services, REST API, that type of stuff that's going in there. Data conversion is all done by Excel spreadsheets, so there's no more direct access to the API that's there. The workflow is actually built off of, BPM technology that was present in PeopleSoft and in the Fusion middleware stack. So, there's a little bit of tool component associated with that that's different, which your administrators and your current business analysts will need to become familiar with as part of the migration in there. Brand new reporting tool, unless you're using, if you're using OBIE or OBIA, this is a new reporting tool for most people. A lot find it to be much better than the reporting tools that they have in place, but it is a new tool, so it needs to be part of the consideration that's there. I think in general you will find that the system is easier to configure and maintain, and that you're spending less time kind of remembering the navigation path to get to the setup step that goes along with what you're trying to change, and there's less real, full-blown issues around, you can't change this because it'll screw up the entire environment. So there's less, kind of must-have complete, activities that go in there. So we've built a number of extract scripts from EBS to cloud to assist with data conversion and configuration. And we'll talk about that a little bit on the next slide here. But that actually helps to focus on, or to migrate some of those changes into the application in a like-for-like, manner, so you're not starting from scratch associated with that. So we do find that BAs with EBS experience are very able to, how the cloud works, and much better than pulling somebody off the street that maybe, knows Microsoft or, SAP or a different application like that. So, and then the last point I want to make around the SaaS model being different. So if you're used to being able to pull up code or SQL Developer and, access the tables and make an update to the table structure or logged in as the apps user, all that goes away. You don't have the keys to the castle anymore. And so there is a reliance upon a cloud operations group at Oracle to be able to support the model that exists there. So you don't have the ability to configure everything that's related to your environment. You need to log SRs to get with CloudOps to be able to make some things change. The difference is that CloudOps is not Oracle support, and so you don't tend to go through the same level of iterations as you might from a typical support analyst. If you put in a request for something to be changed, you can usually get to that person quicker, and they will respond faster because it's a smaller, more focused team associated with being able to support the application. So the experience there is very different for the user than maybe logging an SR, asking how some functionality works, or trying to resolve a bug or an issue associated with that. So, but that does take some getting used to, especially if you're used to being somebody that has full access to be able to administer the applications from there. So what we're typically doing on these migration paths is we're looking for the areas of change from EBS to the cloud. Okay, so many customers are looking for, to correct things that they've lived with for many years in EBS, like maybe an inoptimal chart of account structure, or organizations that have long since been retired, and all that type of stuff. And so you have an opportunity to fix some of those issues as they come up, right? But in general, you are looking to maintain processes as close to, the existing EBS processes as possible, right? So if your AP process isn't broken, you're just looking to transfer that to the cloud, right? So we're really looking at what those change elements are up front, and then when we pull the data, when we pull the configurations from EBS, there's a mapping to the cloud ERP, HCM mappings from a configuration perspective, that would go on there. So we're kind of extracting, highlighting the things that need change, right, and then running the, configuration scripts associated with that. So you quickly have a cloud instance that is, fairly close to your EBS install around that. And then we're just focusing on, not only the changes that are there, but also looking at the change management associated with new screens, new navigations, slightly new processes, that type of stuff, right? Our typical EBS user picks these things up very quickly. Somebody that's brand new to Oracle will need to be trained on a much more detailed, basis that's out there, right? And then it's really, from a training perspective, it's really around kind of training the administrative team at a customer site on how to use the new tool sets, right, and to solution any customizations that's associated with EBS. So that's the lion's share of the work, is in that design phase, is really, kind of transferring knowledge from what you knew in EBS to what the cloud has to provide you today, right? So you're quickly into the application, but you're learning some slightly new tool sets that, may be familiar to you, but not necessarily 100% familiar there. So, and then we go through a normal CRP, UAT testing events and that type of stuff. So when we look at building the business case for our customers in the cloud, we see that there's cost savings over running on-premises applications. You don't have an annual support charge that goes into this. You pay a subscription fee. Typically, that subscription fee, has like a 1.5 to 2 year kind of break even to what you would currently be paying from a EBS support perspective. So in the long run, you are ultimately saving some money, over what you were paying on the Oracle license plus the support costs on an annual basis, right? You have no hardware. The maintenance is included, the support's included, the infrastructure support is included, right? So, a lot of times you're sunsetting, application hosting services or DBA services that are associated with the applications as a whole, right? Your upgrades and the introduction of new functionality in there they're pretty much non-events for the cloud-based applications, because there's no customizations to the stack that exists there. I won't tell you that there are no bugs in the cloud, but the stack is pretty much left intact, right? And so if any customizations are done, they're on that separate PaaS server, which doesn't go through an upgrade process that's there. So you will find that the introduction of new modules and new feature functionality and the ability to stay current will actually cost less in the long run. You won't be paying millions of dollars for an upgrade process to go through. We do advise customers do some level of, regression testing on their environments when they actually go up to the new release and evaluate the new functionality that's out there. That's a much lower cost than running through Chemney remediation during an upgrade process, right? We do see that, there's no VPN necessary to access. You can put a VPN. You can whitelist. There's a variety of different ways to be able to lock down your cloud-based instance. But, with there not being any installation really required there, you are kind of saving some costs from an implementation perspective there. We've seen people eliminate, some of their BI tools that they're currently running on EBS today by leveraging the embedded reporting layers that's there. There's an embedded Hyperion S-based cube hanging off the GL that could cause you to, also remove Hyperion, some Hyperion functions from your install, some of the S-based functions that you might have hanging off of EBS today, which is another on-premise application to sunset. So when we're looking at pulling all these things together, again, you're looking beyond just EBS. You're looking at, some of the outside applications that might actually drive that. So, we talked about the system being easier to manage and support, and there's an integration layer, for web services that's in there that, should drastically reduce your point-to-point integration, processes that you're running through today. They'll modernize them. They'll give you some better tools to be able to support from an error processing perspective and a notification and that type of thing. What you need to consider here is that upgrades are flexible, but they're mandated, right? And you do have some flexibility as to when you can install those, but they need to be done, right? Not all the functionality is there today, right? And so you really need to consider what's available in the cloud when you're looking at that time frame there. So system refreshes, so if you're used to saying I need to clone my production environment and get it copied over into test tomorrow, those take some planning and time based on the fact that you're using cloud ops now. And so there are time frames involved in that takes a little bit of getting used to and isn't always optimal from a usage perspective. Right? You still are dealing with Oracle service requests, right? And that's a big turnoff for some people, right? But the Cloud Ops group is a lot better than the typical support analyst team and actually getting, the equivalent of DBA functions done today. You can actually access the table structures within the back end through the reporting tools, and so you can run PL/SQL queries against, the table structures to be able to help find data and to pull reports and custom reports and that type of stuff. And the table structures are not significantly different from how they are in EBS. So we find people who are used to kind of pulling up SQL Developer and running a query have ways to be able to do that, right? And then, saying systems need to be compatible with cloud apps, web services integrating data in. The easiest way to plug two systems together is when web services are enabled on both sides, right? And so, assuming that architecture works for you, you have the ability to take files and kind of run them through a middleware layer and those sorts of things and kind of fit into the technology stack that's underneath the cloud apps. So the last piece here is really talking about stepping stones, right? So for those customers that are looking at that 4.5 to 7 year window, and they need to continue to reduce costs, but they are, not interested in moving to the cloud, or it's not possible because of functionality limitations. Moving to a public cloud, hybrid cloud solution provider is definitely an option that many of our customers are evaluating and entertaining. We have over 50 customers live on running their EBS install on AWS. They've been doing that for 4 to 5 years now with significant examples of people who've been very successful at doing that. And you have the benefit of turning off and turning on new instances and paying as you go type of processes that go along with that. We are seeing that Oracle is offering a competitive solution to the AWS install called bare metal, and we feel like that will become relevant over the course of this year as a competing option to AWS. And then Microsoft is also making noise around moving their Azure cloud out there as an element. So we see a lot of these players in the marketplace hitting customers and have a lot of experience in moving our customers into an environment like this, and happy to talk through that with you as you go along. So final thoughts right now, anybody who's running EBS for financials and procurement only, kind of a slam dunk, right, for you to be looking at the cloud, because these modules are well-baked, they're well-formed, they're full functionality. You're easily going to be able to replace what you're doing in EBS with these modules. Projects customers, while projects been out for a while, a lot of the customizations that you do to billing and revenue calculations are not really present within the cloud, and so that's where the PaaS application comes into play, for you to be able to build some of this custom, development and custom work there. But it's still a migration of custom code, and so you really should evaluate the additional features and functionality within the cloud around the projects module to make sure that it makes sense for you from there. From a supply chain perspective, really those customers that are doing a heavy contract manufacturing flow will see significant improvements around that. The drop ship process is excellent. The ability to actually do, kind of that outsourced product process flow is very well baked within the cloud. The people with full solutions, including install base and quality, service contracts, process manufacturing, you really need to wait for those modules to be ready. And we're targeting R13 and beyond for those to be full solutions within the cloud. So that's the presentation. I know we're short on time. Julian, do you have a couple questions in the chat window? I'm happy to stay on.